When World War II ended in 1945, the Third Reich's machinery ground to a halt. With Germany's surrender, soldiers of the SS, a most feared Nazi organization, faced varying fates. Some were captured and tried. Others vanished for decades, while a select few rejoined society using false identities. However, the Reich's collapse didn't end its legacy, nor stop many culprits from evading justice. For years, Allied forces, Mossad, and other intel agencies ran a global manhunt for those responsible for the Holocaust and other war crimes. From the Nuremberg trials to covert missions in South America and the Middle East, the chase spanned over 7 decades. How were Nazi war criminals pursued and what became of them? A Reich in ruins. The road to defeat. By late 1944, both the Axis and Allied side saw the war tide turn irreversibly against Nazi Germany. What was once a powerful regime began to rapidly disintegrate. Hitler lost control of his military, and within his inner circle, plots emerged. Operation Valkyrie, designed as an emergency measure to ensure continuity of command during extreme crises, became an assassination attempt on Hitler by senior officers. His removal was key to staging a coup and freeing the army from its oath to the Führer. However, this plot failed, keeping Hitler in power until his eventual collapse in 1945. As the British and Americans advanced to liberate France, Soviet forces launched their final offensive from the east. By early 1945, they were rapidly closing in on Germany's capital. Senior German commanders shuttled into the Führer's bunker, finding no effective way to halt the bloody defeat of their forces. Relentless bombing forced many cities to surrender, making clear Hitler's dream of absolute power was crumbling. Berlin, the regime's symbol, became the war's epicenter. In his subterranean fortress, Hitler began to completely detach from reality. Joseph Goebbels, in charge of propaganda, kept him in a bubble of delusion with false reports of non-existent victories, while Soviet artillery boomed nearby. Civilians faced devastation, with basic supplies scarce, infrastructure ruined, and most seeking shelter in bunkers or fleeing to the countryside. Nazi regional leaders, in a show of denial, clung to power, enforcing brutal measures against anyone attempting to desert or express discontent. Even within the Nazi leadership, fragmentation was evident. On April 23, Hermann Göring sent a message to Hitler requesting leadership, which angered the dictator and led him to accuse him of treason. With no other options, Göring began fleeing south, hoping to negotiate a surrender with the Allies. Meanwhile, Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, attempted secret negotiations with the West but was captured and imprisoned, where he met his end as a POW. On the dawn of April 29, with fate sealed, Hitler married Eva Braun and left his final written will, warning of betrayal and the importance of the Aryan race. Alarming news of the Soviet army's advance towards the bunker echoed incessantly. At 3:30 p.m. on April 30, a loud explosion rocked the underground shelter. SS officers entered Hitler's study and found both Hitler and Eva Braun deceased. His closest followers, under specific orders, ensured their bodies were burned to prevent Allied forces from capturing them. And that's what happened. They were never found. News of Hitler's death plunged Germany into utter chaos. Joseph Goebbels and his wife, Magda, chose to follow a similar fate, and they weren't alone. Before doing so, they ensured their 6 children would never be captured by the enemy. On May 2, 1945, with Berlin fully encircled, Soviet troops captured the Reichstag building and raised their flag high. At that moment, Nazi power effectively ended. Though the capital fell, clashes continued at various points in Germany for a few more days. Finally, on May 7, Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, who became Nazi leader after Hitler's death, signed the Unconditional Surrender, ending the war in Europe. However, peace didn't arrive immediately. The Allies then began an intense manhunt to capture and prosecute those responsible for the Nazi regime, trying to disappear and flee as far as possible from Germany. Key Third Reich associates like Martin Bormann, Heinrich Himmler, and Reinhold Heydrich chose to vanish rather than face trial in Nuremberg. Others decided to surrender, hoping for leniency. Hermann Göring, captured for plotting against Hitler, was freed on May 5, after being rescued by a Luftwaffe unit. He immediately moved to US forces to surrender, believing dealings with the Americans would be more lenient than with the Soviets. This decision likely saved his life. The Red Army did not often show mercy to captured Nazi officers. In their quest to track down Nazis across Europe, the Allied powers devised a plan to try those responsible for the Nazi regime through an international court. This involved not only apprehending as many officials and officers of the Reich as possible but also gathering crucial evidence to use against them. Among them, of course, were the wives of some senior commanders. Goethe, Martin Bormann's wife, tried to escape Germany with her 9 children. Amidst the chaos of the Soviet advance into Berlin, she disguised herself as an orphanage director, with some of her children posing as orphans. Under this false identity, she boarded a bus and crossed into Italy, where she found refuge in South Tyrol. Here, she was taken in by a local Nazi party leader who provided her with shelter and was responsible for protecting the sensitive documents she carried. Eventually, her family settled in a small village about 50 kilometers from Bolzano. Although temporarily evading capture, Goethe's health rapidly declined due to ovarian cancer, requiring emergency surgery. However, her hiding place didn't remain undiscovered. Allied intelligence agents found out and informed the British forces present in the area. A local doctor, under interrogation, provided information about her health condition and whereabouts. A British officer arrived at her home, and although fearing being taken to a POW camp, the officer assured her she was not in danger. Instead of being arrested, she was transferred to a military hospital in Murano. Despite surgery, her condition didn't improve, and she passed away on May 23, 1946, a few months before her 37th birthday. Some lower-ranking members of the Nazi regime realized their only option for survival was to cooperate with the victors, deciding to work with the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, a precursor to the CIA. A prime example is Wilhelm Hoffel, who served as an SS officer in Austria. With a strong academic background, he spent much of his career concealing cases and treasures of the German government, as well as hoards of gold hidden in Austrian mountains. However, events unfolded faster than anticipated. Before reaching an agreement, Soviet forces advanced into Berlin. In May 1945, he attempted to cross the border into Switzerland, but the presence of French troops on the border prevented him. Arrested in Liechtenstein, he decided to return to Austria to find a safe haven. Finally, later that month, he surrendered to American troops in Bassano. He was then taken to Germany, and in October 1947, he was brought to Lagerklassheim in Salzburg. During this time, Hoffel became a key witness in the Nuremberg trials, providing crucial information for prosecutions. In October 1947, he was released as part of a deal with American intelligence agencies, after which he began collaborating with them on espionage operations against the Soviet Union and other communist European countries. In the following years, besides his intelligence work, he also dedicated time to writing books and publishing several works. Not all members of the Nazi regime escaped justice. Rudolf Höss, infamous for commanding the Auschwitz concentration camp and responsible for the deaths of over 2.5 million Jews, managed to hide for nearly 5 years after the Reich's collapse. To avoid detection, he adopted a false identity and lived as a farmer in rural northern Germany, near the Danish border. His capture occurred when American troops began arresting his wife, who provided information that led to his hideout. 2 army units surrounded the farm where he was hiding and found him unprepared, still in his pajamas. After his capture, he was taken back to Auschwitz, where he faced his sentence. It was here, not far from where he had lived with his family until 1945, that his execution took place. The flight of the Nazis. Who fled? The Reich, an organized escape. On May 7, 1945, a report from U.S. Army Provost Marshal Intelligence was sent to the President. It states the Nazis' planned escape routes back in 1944. This strategy was named ODESSA, a group formed by ex-SS members. We're still unsure if this was an organized effort by the Nazi government or separate plans by different factions. But many Nazis did escape the country undetected. At least 300 former Empire soldiers found refuge in Argentina alone. They also fled to Brazil, Paraguay, and Middle Eastern nations. Around 10,000 Nazi Party members left Germany before World War II ended. Some historians point to groups like Organization Todt and even the US military's involvement. To stay hidden, escapees used fake IDs or got help from others. Years later, the CIA, Mossad, and MI5 worked to find and nab these criminals worldwide. The immediate priority after the war was stability and rebuilding Germany. Whether Odessa was real or just an idea, the networks helping Nazis escape are undeniable. In the war's early years, about 90% of escapees crossed the Alps to Italy, like Goethe Bormann. Their first stop was often Tirolo, South Tyrol, near Austria. Monks there gave fake IDs, letting them get travel permits without much checking. These routes, called Ratlines, suggest the Vatican and Pope Pius XII helped war criminals. This isn't a stretch, as Pius XII saw communism as the biggest threat to the Church and the West. In South Tirolo, priests issued travel permits with verified, albeit fake, escapee details. These documents allowed war criminals to get papers for protection from prosecution. Roughly 100,000 documents were issued between 1945 and 1951. However, American intelligence was aware of this. In 1946, U.S. agents found Rudolf Höss hiding on a farm near Salzburg. He reportedly gave up info willingly during questioning, stating his health and location. A British officer visited, assuring him he was safe despite his fears. Instead of arrest, he was sent to a military hospital in Murano. Despite surgery, his health declined, and he died on May 23, 1946, short of his 37th birthday. Some lower-level Nazis worked with U.S. intelligence agencies, the OSS, the CIA's predecessor. One was Wilhelm Hoffel, a high-ranking SS officer in Austria, whose profile hid many Nazi crimes and hidden treasures. But things moved faster than planned. Before talks finished, Soviet troops reached Berlin. In May 1945, he tried to cross into Switzerland but was stopped by French troops. Arrested in Liechtenstein, he chose to return to Austria for safety. Later that month, he surrendered to U.S. troops in Bassano. He was taken to Germany and held at Lager Klarsheim in Salzburg in October 1947. Hoffel became a key witness at the Nuremberg trials, providing crucial conviction evidence. In October 1947, he was released under a deal with US intelligence and began spying against the Soviets and Eastern Bloc. In the following years, he also wrote and published several books. Not all Nazis escaped justice. Rudolf Höss, the Auschwitz commandant responsible for over 2.5 million Jewish deaths, hid for nearly 5 years after the empire's fall. He used fake IDs, living as a farmer in North Germany near the Danish border. His arrest came when the US military nabbed his wife, who helped reveal his hiding spot. 2 army units raided the farm, finding him unprepared in his pajamas. After capture, he was taken back to Auschwitz to face his sentence. He was executed there, near where he lived with his family until 1945. Joseph Mengele, from Auschwitz to South America. For some lower-ranking Nazis, capture wasn't a priority due to the high cost of hunting them down. But for Joseph Mengele, his crimes were too horrific to ignore, and he eluded justice. He felt safe enough to stay put, believing he'd remain unfound. However, his overconfidence led to his discovery by concentration camp survivors. After being caught, he was taken to Uruguay and lived under a fake name for years. Old friends helped him, offering refuge and protection from justice. Mengele drowned while swimming in Brazil in 1985. His body was identified by fingerprints and dental records. Though Mengele evaded justice for years, he finally faced consequences. His story reminds us that justice, however delayed, eventually arrives. Simon Wiesenthal's lifelong hunt. Simon Wiesenthal, a Holocaust survivor, dedicated his life to tracking down Nazi war criminals. He famously found Rudolf Höss, Auschwitz commandant, who was arrested and tried in 1947. Wiesenthal also helped locate Adolf Eichmann, a key architect of the Holocaust, caught in Argentina in 1960. His relentless efforts brought justice to thousands of Nazi victims. Wiesenthal amassed a vast collection of documents and evidence on Nazi crimes. His archive is now at the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Jerusalem, Israel. Simon Wiesenthal's life shows the power of perseverance. He worked tirelessly to ensure humanity's crimes are never forgotten. His legacy inspires future generations to fight injustice and promote justice. The truth about the escapees finally emerged. Years after the war, researchers found evidence thousands of Nazis fled to South America. They used organized escape routes, known as ODESSA, to evade justice. Declassified documents reveal the network's scale, showing hundreds of Nazis got help escaping to Argentina, Paraguay, and Chile. Many adopted new identities and lived normal lives, avoiding justice's pursuit. But the truth eventually came out. Investigators identified and captured some, bringing them to justice. Though many are dead or vanished, the search continues, ensuring their crimes aren't forgotten. The existence of the ODESSA network is a chilling reminder of how Nazis tried to evade responsibility. But it also shows that justice, though late, can ultimately be served. The hunt for Nazis goes on, with investigators working tirelessly to bring all perpetrators to justice.